Dear friends, we would be discussing energy management in HVAC system in this lecture. HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning is an important component found in almost all the industries. Might be because of comfort requirements, or this might be because of some process requirement. So we would always come across the HVAC system, and HVAC being one of the most energy guzzling kind of system, it is most relevant for us to discuss and understand the energy saving tips in HVAC systems. This lecture, we would be confining our attention to the chillers. HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, they employ chillers, and chillers are huge units which would consume a lot of electricity for running the compressors. We are talking about here the electric chillers. So the electric chillers, they have the four basic components, namely the two heat exchangers, the evaporator and condenser, and the two devices for maintaining the pressure difference between the evaporator and condenser. Those devices are compressor, the refrigerant compressor, and an expansion device. So chillers, we would be discussing the performance parameters first, namely how do we assess the performance of the chillers through the parameters called as energy efficiency ratio, coefficient of performance, and kilowatts per TR. Then we would be looking into more specifically the concept of chiller, the basic thermodynamic cycle of the chiller, and then we would be discussing very specific tips for saving electricity for chillers. So this is the plan of the lecture. To assess the performance of chiller, there are certain terms we need to be familiar with. One is called as the ton of refrigeration. So the capacity of any chillers we would be mentioning in this term, that this is a chiller of 100 tons of refrigeration. This is a chiller of 50 TR. This is a chiller of 300 TR, and so on. So what does this TR means? So tons of refrigeration has nothing to do with the weight as such. It is basically the refrigeration capacity. And by refrigeration capacity, what we mean is how much heat this chiller can remove per unit time. So it is a cooling rate which this ton of refrigeration specifies. So 1 ton of refrigeration, it has been agreed upon that 1 ton of refrigeration is about 3000 kilocalories per hour. So if a refrigeration unit, if a chiller is able to remove about 3000 kilocalories of heat every hour, then that would be a 1 ton chiller. If you want other units, then in SI units, for example, if a chiller is able to remove 3.5 kilojoules of heat every second, or 3.5 kilowatts, it means the capacity is 1 ton or 1 TR. In British thermal units, that comes to about 12,000 BTU per hour. So any chiller of capacity of 1 TR would be equivalent to 12,000 BTU of heat removal per hour, or 3.51 kilojoules of heat removal per second. This is one unit we need to be understanding a bit. The second important unit, and this is more to do with the performance assessment, is what is known as specific power consumption. So if there are 4 chillers, and if the chiller whose specific power consumption is minimum, then we would say that it is the most efficient chiller. The chiller with the lowest value of specific power consumption is the best chiller. So what is the specific power consumption? So it is basically how much electricity the chiller is consuming for giving you the equivalent refrigerating effect. So a chiller with least specific power consumption would consume least electricity per TR. Okay, so it's specified in terms of power consumption. Power consumption is expressed in kilowatts, and we know that the refrigerating effect, that is the cooling effect, is expressed in tons of refrigeration. So the unit comes as kilowatts per TR. The another in more academic circles, we would say that unit of coefficient of performance is used. COP, or coefficient of performance, in academic circles is referred to as the refrigerating effect upon work done. And similarly, energy efficiency ratio is also the refrigerating effect upon work done. The difference between COP and EER is that in COP, coefficient of performance, the refrigerating effect and the work done, they carry the same units, whereas when you are expressing the performance of the chiller in EER, we generally express the refrigerating effect in BTUs per hour and the work done in watts. So that way it would have a different value than the COP, but essentially both the things, the COP and EER, they capture the same performance. That is, they talk about how much cooling effect or refrigerating effect you are getting per unit work consumption. So these units we need to be familiar with. Specific power consumption, COP and EER. The desirable values of specific power consumption is minimum, and the COP and EER has to be maximum for the best chiller. Now, because this discussion is on how do we save electricity by using chiller, we need to be familiar with the concept of the vapor compression refrigeration cycle, which is the important thermodynamic cycle for electric chillers. Okay, so electric chillers, they would have, as I said, two heat exchangers. One is the evaporator and there is the condenser, wherein you would expect two processes to happen. One is the evaporation and other is a condensation. And then there is a power guzzling device, the electricity consuming device, namely the compressor, which would give us the compression phenomena. And then there is a throttling phenomena in the expansion device. So these are the four basic processes: evaporation, followed by compression, followed by condensation, and then expansion. Performance, the coefficient of performance of the chiller is, as I said, the refrigerating effect which you get in the evaporator section upon the power consumption which you get in the compressor. So if you look at this diagram, it would be more clear to you that if these two lines, that is the condensation lines and the evaporation line, if they are far apart, if the condensation line and evaporation line are far apart, the power consumption would increase, the work of the compressor would increase. So if you want to maintain the difference between the condensation line and evaporation line less, okay, the lift is less, that is the difference is less, than the power consumption would be less, the performance would be better. So how do you do that? So one way is to increase the evaporator temperature. So if you increase the evaporator temperature, or the other way is if you lower the condensation temperature, then this difference would be reduced. So in order to improve the performance or the coefficient of performance of the machine, the chiller, and that is to save electricity in the chiller, we need to go for higher evaporator temperature. This temperature has to be higher and this condensation temperature has to be lower, so that the power consumption is reduced and the coefficient of performance is reduced. Coefficient of performance is improved. Okay, so higher the evaporator temperature and lower the condenser temperature, better is the coefficient of performance. As a thumb rule, you must understand the thumb rule that if there is a 1 degree higher temperature of refrigerant in the evaporator, if you manage somehow to design your system such that this evaporator temperature is increased by 1 degree centigrade, then the coefficient of performance would improve by 2%. And if on the other hand, you are able to lower the condensation temperature also by 1 degree centigrade, you can improve the performance by 2%, 2 to 4%. So it means that this is very critical, the maintaining the right evaporation temperature as high as possible and maintaining the right condensation temperature as low as possible is critical for saving electricity in the chillers. That is for energy savings in the chillers. Okay, so this is a typical thumb rule you need to remember. How do you increase the evaporator temperature? We just said that 1 degree rise in the evaporator temperature would give us a benefit of 2 to 4% of increase in the coefficient of performance. Now, how practically we can increase this evaporator temperature? So these evaporator temperatures can be increased by the following methods. So you look at this. We can change the process temperature settings such that the evaporator temperature is increased. This means that depending upon your application, if you judiciously choose the evaporator temperature and set it to a higher level, then the evaporator temperature can be increased. Installing an evaporator of higher heat transfer area, if you use a higher duty heat exchanger here, because basically this is a heat exchanger. So if you can manage to install a higher rating evaporator, which has more heat transfer area, this would help us increase the evaporator temperature. So this is the second method you choose, but it has a drawback that if you are using a higher rating evaporator, that is going to give you higher initial cost. Okay, so there has to be some trade-off. Then this is a commonsensical approach that if you want to have a better heat transfer, because this is a heat exchanger we are talking about in evaporator. So if you manage to keep the heat transfer surface clean, you don't allow fouling to happen, if you don't allow frosting to happen, that is if you employ defrosting technique, and if you clean the surfaces so that there is no fouling, then one can increase the evaporator temperature and thereby decrease the power consumed by the compressor. So these are the tricks which we can employ. That is changing the process temperature settings, then purchasing the evaporator of higher rating, and by maintaining cleanliness of the heat exchanger, and also regular defrosting of the evaporator. On the condensation side, because we just said that the condenser temperature has to be decreased, and we mentioned the thumb rule that if there is a decrease of condensation temperature by 1 degree centigrade, the coefficient of performance improves by 2 to 4%. So how do you decrease the condensation temperature? So this condensation temperature can be decreased by, again, using an oversized condenser. Condenser of a higher rating, and when you say it's higher rating, it has more surface area and better is the heat transfer. Better is the heat transfer, that would result in a lower condensation temperature. The second thing is that we can choose a water-cooled condenser or even evaporatively cooled condenser instead of air-cooled condenser, because you know that if we employ a water-cooled condenser or evaporatively cooled condenser, then because of higher heat transfer coefficient as compared to the air-cooled condensers, this would give you better performance. Better performance means a higher rate of heat transfer, and higher rate of heat transfer would mean that the condenser temperature decreases. So choice of water-cooled condenser or evaporatively cooled condenser instead of air-cooled condenser would increase the complexity of the system. It would increase the capital cost, but it would give you better savings in terms of electricity. And you would find that in most of the industries where high capacity HVAC systems are used, either the water cooled condenser is used or evaporative cooled condensers are employed. The condenser temperature also is allowed to float down with the ambient temperature. This is what we should do while setting the condenser temperature. So you float down, if you set it with respect to ambient temperature, then the condenser temperature can be decreased automatically. So this is one way of controlling the condenser temperature, that is to allow it to float down with the ambient temperature. So this way we can reduce the power consumption by appropriate measures on the condenser side. Now, we need to also understand that because the HVAC system involves many things like refrigerants as well as compressors, the properties of the refrigerants also would play an important role in improving the performance of the HVAC chiller. Okay, so the amount of refrigerant which one uses in the HVAC system, they would have a bearing on the performance of HVAC system, its coefficient of performance. And if, for example, there are some leakages of refrigerants, then that is the charge in the system reduces somehow, the system is going to consume more electricity. So we need to make sure that the system has appropriate charge and there are no leakages of the refrigerant. The properties of the refrigerant also have a vital role to play. And if you do an analysis of the refrigeration system using the pressure enthalpy diagram, and if you play with the properties of the refrigerant, you will find that the performance with different refrigerants is different. Hence, there is not a single refrigerant, which is an ideal refrigerant, but different applications would require different refrigerants choice. So a choice of refrigerant is also critical in maintaining the coefficient of performance higher. The choice of compressor and its efficiency also has its role if you want to maintain the performance of HVAC chiller. So we would see that these many factors, including the performance of the compressor and the refrigerants used, also critically impacts the performance of the chiller. On the refrigerant side, there are other things to be kept in mind, and I just quoted some figures, like for example, the refrigerant type, appropriate selection of the refrigerant which I was mentioning can affect the efficiency of the system by about 10%. Then the relative performance and efficiency of the refrigerant is also affected by the choice of compressor and the operating conditions. This you would better understand with the help of pH diagrams, pressure enthalpy diagrams. And I also mentioned that appropriate charging of the refrigerant is essential. If there is too much charge, that would also reduce the coefficient of performance, and too little a charge is not at all advisable. That is going to impact the efficiency adversely. Insufficient quantity of refrigerant, it reduces the weighted area of the evaporator, and you understand that that would decrease the heat transfer, and it would increase the superheat. And if the superheat increases, superheat is basically the temperature difference between the entry of the refrigerant into the compressor and the temperature at the outlet of the evaporator. So this degree of superheat, if it increases, that would reduce the performance of the system. That would reduce the suction pressure, and it would increase the temperature lift, and that would also decrease the coefficient of performance. And then one needs to understand that the refrigerant has to be maintained clean. There should be no gas entry or air entry into the refrigerant, because that would eat away the performance of the system, because the entry of gas and air, which is having a poor heat transfer characteristics, they would unnecessarily occupy the space, that is evaporator space, and impact the coefficient of performance of the system. So this factors we need to keep in mind when we talk about chillers. Okay, so whenever we buy chillers from the market, HVAC chillers from the market, be careful about its kilowatt per TR rating. Ask for the characteristic curves of that, the performance characteristics. Actually go and look for the reviews of those chillers, because we cannot afford to simply blindly choose a chiller. And that the reason is being because these are energy guzzling devices. For example, if you take a 100 TR system, and 100 TR system, if you talk about a COP of 3.5, you would say that a 100 TR system would require a 100 kilowatt compressor. Okay, and 100 kilowatt compressor, if it is operated for 10 hours, it is going to consume 1,000 units of electricity. Okay, so this is the scale of electricity we are talking about. So energy savings in chillers is an important intervention, and that kind of intervention would save a lot of electricity in industries. I hope this introduction to the chillers, and especially the performance aspects of the chillers, must have enlightened you and made you more confident in dealing with energy saving practices in the industry. Thank you very much. Bye.